Right then guys, it's PSL here and I'm here for the 4th episode in my Stewart Manager Career Mode series on Grand Prix World. Last time out we had the Brazilian Grand Prix and it was fairly successful for Stewart, but it was much more successful for Mika Hakkinen, who won the Brazilian Grand Prix, and that is despite the fact that Jacques Villeneuve took pole position. Now you can see this on the news. On screen we have got the post-Brazil news. And I didn't have time to go through this in the previous episode, so I'm going to go through it right now. Although the first 2 news items we already know from the previous episode, and we know most of the 3rd news item as well, and that is that Harvey Postlethwaite will be joining Stewart next season as our technical director, an upgrade from our current 2-star technical director to Harvey Postlethwaite, who is 3-star rated. The thing we didn't know at the time is that Harvey Postlethwaite was in discussions to go to Williams. And that's astonishing on both counts because, firstly, why would Williams want Harvey Postlethwaite? Surely Williams would want someone who is higher rated, a 4-star or 5-star technical director. It's just really weird. I mean, and also, why would Harvey Postlethwaite decide to join us as opposed to Williams? It's just such an unlikely negotiation and such an unlikely deal to happen, and it was us that prevented it from happening, which is really strange. And as you can see, well, there's not really much to go on in the 2nd page, but in the 3rd page of news, Heinz-Harald Frentzen will be racing for Benetton next season, and Jacques Villeneuve will be staying at Williams. So that's the driver signings, and also Benetton have signed Ian Phillips to be their commercial manager next season. Adrian Newey, though, is going to join Williams for 1999. And the really weird thing about that is Adrian Newey is a technical director, much like Harvey Postlethwaite, and Williams was speaking to Harvey Postlethwaite. And then you've also got Nigel Stepney, who has agreed to join Williams next season. Now, Nigel Stepney is, I believe, Ferrari's chief mechanic. Certainly, he is the highest rated chief mechanic in the game, and he'll be going to Williams next season. So Williams have done a lot of deals. They've got Jacques Villeneuve, Adrian Newey, Nigel Stepney. They've also already signed a cash sponsor, Visa. Now, I don't know what level of cash sponsor Visa are. Now, Visa might be only 2-star rated, but this shows what I've been saying all along, and that is that the top teams can get deals done very quickly because they've got really highly rated commercial managers, probably with high morale as well. They'll have a lot of commercial assistants, and also they're doing well out on track. Now, on-track performance does impact sponsor negotiations. So that's why it's really good that we're doing well in the races. And when I say doing well, I mean finishing. Because it is genuinely better to finish about 10th than it is to retire in 17th. Because although it makes no difference, normally it wouldn't make any difference, I wouldn't care because you still scored 0 points. But it does impact sponsor negotiations. So yeah, that's why I'm glad I'm doing well in the races. However, we're not getting podium finishes unlike Williams, and we have a much smaller commercial department. So yeah, the point is all of those factors explain how Williams have already signed a cash sponsor, and we haven't really done anything when it comes to commercial negotiations. And just a quick update post the Brazilian Grand Prix, and that is that Tom Walkinshaw has been named the least effective manager in Formula 1, and Ron Dennis has been named the best F1 manager. I assume a large reason for that was because that Mika Hakkinen won the Brazilian Grand Prix. So that's that. However, on page 5, this is the most immediately important piece of news, and that is the FIA has issued regulations governing the design and dimensions of next year's chassis. Now that is important because if we... Oh, testing is only $1,000 per mile. Right, we'll get onto that in a second. Okay, so because the FIA... Now it is random, it's not The FIA, as you can see, we now know the regulations for the chassis next year because there's a tick there. And they don't always issue the regulations at the same point in the season. In fact, this is fairly early in the season. Sometimes they issue the regulations, I'm not sure on the range, but it can certainly be later than after the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is pretty much the earliest they can announce the regulations, and it can be, you know, a few Grand Prix afterwards. So they've announced the regulations for next year's chassis nice and early, so that's good. So it gives us plenty of time to design next year's chassis. We've already got some progress done. I'm not quite sure how. I do know actually you can get progress done on parts even if there's nobody working on it. That's why you always want to be working on a driver aid and a technology upgrade, even if you don't assign anyone to it. You just want one active because you can make progress. Progress can fill up over the course of the season. I'm not quite sure why, but it does. And also, you can do research testing, which fills it up, but we haven't done any research testing, so that doesn't explain the progress on next year's chassis. Anyway, we're going to start work on that. Before we do that, we do want to construct the performance upgrade to the brakes, so we will actually have a upgrade to the car for for this Grand Prix coming up, the Argentine Grand Prix. However, that does take 43% of our engineers. Oh, okay. What's wrong with Magnussen's car? It's 100% fully worn, right. Oh, that's going to be problematic, isn't it? So Magnussen can't go testing because he doesn't have a car. Well, he doesn't have a usable car. Do you know what? No, I'm not even going to... Let's not change it. Let's just keep it as is. So we haven't changed anything there with the mechanics and drivers. So what's the summary of testing? So we've got some setup points. That's nice. We've filled up the development bar. That is what I want. So we now know the problem, or one of the problems, with this season's chassis. So we can now actually work on fixing it. So that means we want to take people off of working on the driver aid upgrade, and we want half of them working on next season's chassis and half of them working on this season's chassis. So we're working on two separate chassis at the same time. We'll improve the reliability since that is the weakest area of the engine. So yes, the engine is going to be more reliable. That upgrade will come in after the Argentine Grand Prix. So let's have a look at our commercial deals. We've made no progress towards the Castrol deal, no progress towards the fuel deal, no progress towards the tyre deal, and a small amount of progress towards the engine deal. However, we're still short of getting a customer deal, and we don't want a customer deal. But look, we've made one bar of progress, and that's with half of my entire commercial staff going towards the deal. Whereas the tyres, fuel and cash, where they've only got 15 or 20% working on it, there's been no progress made. That's how small and not very well skilled our commercial department is. And in fact, one thing I should say just before we head into the Argentine Grand Prix, one final thing, and that is someone left a comment in the previous episode saying, why don't you get Mercedes engines? Because Mercedes, they can supply 3 teams, so in theory there's less risk because we're going with Ferrari and Ferrari can only supply 2 teams, so there's greater chance that we will be left without a deal, whereas Mercedes can supply 3 teams and still 2 works deals. And there's lots of reasons I could say why I'm not going with Mercedes, because of course Mercedes will have competition from one of the top teams who can get deals done quicker, all this and that. However, the bottom line is, if I assigned some of my commercial staff and they went to speak to Mercedes, Mercedes would come back and they would refuse to speak to us. They honestly would. It would be the same response that we would get from the team sponsor. So I'm not speaking to the team sponsors for the same reason I'm not speaking to Mercedes, and that is Mercedes will refuse to give us engines next season. So it's pointless speaking to them. Ferrari is the best engine supplier that will actually give us engines. We'll just stick with that, that's all fine. So yes, let's head on into the 1998 Argentine Grand Prix. So then, a dry qualifying session, that's good considering we are a Bridgestone runner. So then, where are we going to qualify? Okay, slightly disappointing for Magnussen, although 15th is still broadly where I would hope to qualify. Barrichello in 12th, that's pretty decent. Because, I mean, pretty much... I mean, it's slightly disappointing that we were beaten by Arrows. However, we did beat Damon Hill in the Jordan, and we beat both Saubers. In fact, yeah, Barrichello beat both Sauber drivers, and even Jan Magnussen beat Johnny Herbert in one Sauber. So, in that respect, we have kind of outperformed ourselves. And then, of course, we've beaten Prost, Tyrrell and Minardi, which is basically expected, and everyone did qualify within the 107% time. So 12th and 15th for our guys. Towards the front, this is a bit more normal for 1998. It's a McLaren 1-2. Okay, sure, Fisichella's in third somehow, although it is a Bridgestone 1-2-3, which does make sense given the fact it was a dry qualifying session. But then it's a Goodyear 4-5-6-7. With Jacques Villeneuve in 4th, there's Eddie Irvine, who was the quickest Ferrari driver, as Irvine qualified in 5th, and Michael Schumacher in 7th, with Heinz-Harald Frentzen separating them. So that means Irvine beat Michael Schumacher by 0.3 of a second. However, it doesn't really mean much. I think for the Brazilian Grand Prix, Hakkinen qualified in 7th, 6th or 7th, and then still won the Grand Prix, so it doesn't really mean all that much. And of course, there could be a lot of retirements. So dry Grand Prix, again, that is helpful for us. I think the dry qualifying session went some way to explaining why we beat Sauber and one of the Jordans, because of course they are running Goodyear tyres, so they've got the slight disadvantage there. And we don't really want to change anything there. So, the 1998 Argentine Grand Prix, please do well. Please do well. In fact, that is very good actually for one of our drivers. Jan Magnussen finished in 7th. One position away from a points place. The annoying thing is though, is that Arrows got both of their drivers in the points. Pedro Diniz finished in 5th and he wasn't even lapped. Mika Salo was in 6th, Jan Magnussen in 7th. Magnussen beat Jean Alesi. And then you've got Jarno Trulli, Shinji Nakano, and then both Tyrrells. And everyone else retired. Only 12 drivers finished. So that means Villeneuve was out, Damon Hill, Fisichella retired, Barrichello retired with a unknown issue. Well, that's helpful. Ralf Schumacher out, so in fact both Jordans retired, and both Jordans retired with a gearbox issue. Well, they're going to have to go on their technology screen and work on a technology upgrade, working on improving the reliability of their gearbox. So what else is there? Panis with an engine failure, Tuero with a hydraulics issue, Coulthard and Michael Schumacher both went out with a clutch issue. That is extraordinary though, that Michael Schumacher not only retired but was also the first to retire, and that hasn't done him any good in the Drivers' Championship because Mika Hakkinen has won the 1998 Argentine Grand Prix, and Eddie Irvine, the driver number 2 at Ferrari, finished in 2nd. Heinz-Harald Frentzen finished in 3rd, Alexander Wurz in 4th, then you got both Arrows in 5th and 6th, and Jan Magnussen in 7th. I said right at the very start of this series that Jan Magnussen is better than this game gives him credit for. And it's not just in the Stewart synopsis that the game slags off Jan Magnussen, because if you look at Jan Magnussen's driver ratings, they're really bad. Jan Magnussen is a really lowly rated, lowly skilled driver, according to the game, but this isn't unusual. I didn't call this specifically, but I did say that Magnussen is pretty decent, and he damn nearly scored a point. One more retirement, and he would have scored a point. So in the Drivers' Championship, finally someone has emerged at the very top and are way ahead of second place, as Mika Hakkinen is leading the Drivers' Championship and is 8 points ahead of Eddie Irvine. Irvine is second in the championship. Michael Schumacher is in joint 7th with only 3 points. In fact, he's joint 7th with David Coulthard, and both of those drivers retired early on this Grand Prix with the same issue. Very odd. There's quite a few similarities going on between Schumacher and Coulthard. You've still got Fisichella in 3rd, Alexander Wurz in 4th, both Bennettons ahead of both Williams. And then you got Pedro Diniz in 9th and Mika Salo in 10th. So both Arrows drivers are officially recognised in the Drivers' Championship, whereas both Sauber drivers and both Jordan drivers aren't there at all. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren are leading it, albeit by only 3 points. And they really do have Mika Hakkinen to thank for that, because Mika Hakkinen has scored 21 of the 24 points that McLaren have. Benetton have had 2 drivers that have scored a respectable amount of points, hence why they're in 2nd and ahead of Ferrari. 5 points ahead of Ferrari, which is extraordinary. Ferrari would definitely be in 2nd and ahead of Benetton, but Michael Schumacher, he's just had a complete lack of reliability this season so far, so much so that even Williams are only 2 points behind Ferrari. And then the 5th team in the Constructors' Championship is Arrows, and they've got 3 points to their name. And again, let me just reiterate the fact that Sauber and Jordan both still don't have a point to their name. So then, let's have a look at the news post the Argentine Grand Prix. And the first news item, of course, is that Hakkinen won the 1998 Argentine Grand Prix, and the second news item is that he took pole position. Right, but let's actually have a look at some new news. David Coulthard will be staying with McLaren next season. Jean Alesi will be going to Jordan. That's quite a decent move for both parties, actually. Jean Alesi going to Jordan, that's an upwards move, definitely. And also, Alesi's a very decent driver. Very good, actually. So, yeah, that's a good move all around, actually. What else is there? What? Johnny Herbert will be racing for Williams. So in 1999, the Williams Formula 1 team is going to be Jacques Villeneuve and Johnny Herbert. Who would have had their money on that? I mean, Johnny Herbert isn't that bad of a driver. He's fairly decent, but I mean, Williams, they've lost, gotten rid of, decided not to keep, whatever, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and replaced him with Johnny Herbert. That's surely a backwards move, and surely there's other drivers out there better than Johnny Herbert. I mean, John Alesi, for starters, surely. Anyway, well, that's a fantastic move from Johnny Herbert's perspective, going to Williams next year. Well, that's fantastic for him. Ferrari, of course, another top team with a cash sponsor deal already. Williams have got their second cash sponsor, just once again proving that the top teams, they can get deals done so quickly because of the size and skill of their commercial departments. And then Alain Prost has been named the least effective manager in Formula 1, and Ron Dennis, the manager of the month. Okay, so we've already filled up the requirements for a customer engine deal next season, but we don't want that. Okay, we can get a customer tyre deal already, and a customer fuel deal. And we have filled up a quarter of the completion bar for the cash sponsor deal from Castrol. Right, I'm actually going to get a customer tyre and fuel deal, partly because these 15%, well 15% speaking to Goodyear and 15% speaking to AGIP, I would rather assign them to speaking to Ferrari or to a cash sponsor, because honestly, the difference between a customer deal and a partner deal, I think as standard there isn't really any difference apart from the amount of money you spend. There are different bonuses you get, but I don't really want the bonuses because I don't actually know what bonuses you can get in a customer deal, but they're probably not good. The bonuses you get in a partner deal aren't really that interesting. There's no reason why I would want a partner deal. All of the perks you get from it aren't really that interesting. And $410,000 per season isn't all that much. Even for a team like us, that's nothing. So I'm just going to cut my losses. That's wrong, 0 years. I think that's just a text glitch, I hope it is. Anyway, so we're going to get a customer tyre deal with Goodyear, because I want those 15% of my staff to actually do something else. Because a cash sponsor can be worth far more than $410,000, and certainly far more than $270,000. So that's why we're going to sign the customer fuel deal with AGIP. I haven't actually explained why I'm going with AGIP. I will probably explain that in the next episode, but I'm going with AGIP. It's really just a preference, which I will explain in the next episode. So we will assign, let's say, since we got 30% spare now, let's say we will assign 10% to Ferrari, because we really, really do need a partner deal with Ferrari, and we do need that deal to be done soon, because I'm worried that Ferrari's going to start signing deals with other teams and then we're out of luck. Because once Ferrari signs a deal with 2 other teams, that's it, we're too late. So I do want to get this deal done quickly, hence why we've now got 60% of my entire commercial department working on it, and we will have the other 20% of my commercial staff speaking to... Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know, because some of these cash sponsors can get snapped up very quickly. Let's go with Sarah, because they aren't actually currently sponsoring a team this season. So we'll go with Sarah. Although, in my experience, I do think that Sarah, despite the fact they don't sponsor anyone this season, they do quite often sponsor a team next season. So I think some other team will snap them up before we do, but well, we'll just have to wait and see. Honestly, there's no real kind of preference with which sponsor to go for. I may as well just pick one at random and hope we get lucky. Right, of course, yes, there will be the upgraded engine. So we improved the engine before the Argentine Grand Prix. So that means after it, the engine upgrade has come in. So we've got a 3rd model of Ford engine with the improved reliability. So it's not a performance upgrade, but well, it's going to keep us in more races and will avoid damage being put on our cars, and also give us a greater chance of scoring points. Although, well, to score points we would need lots of other people to retire, which, well, lots of other people retired in the previous Grand Prix and we so nearly scored points. Anyway, we've got a more reliable engine, so that's good. And that is pretty much that. So, and do we... Okay, we do still need 88% of our staff to produce perfect pit stops. Anyway, let's head on into the 1998 San Marino Grand Prix. That was the best one yet, that tune was, right. Anyway, so that's all good. That's good. Another dry Grand Prix. This is fantastic for us. So, let me just check. There hasn't been any tyre improvements. No, of course there hasn't. So we'll just keep, as always, diversifying our options. We'll keep Barrichello on the hard tyres, Magnussen on the softs, and let's see how that pans out for us in qualifying. Okay, slightly worse than the previous Grand Prix, but still more or less the same positions. 13th and 15th, 13th for Barrichello, 15th for Magnussen. Everyone has successfully qualified. So let's have a look. Barrichello out-qualified both Saubers. Magnussen out-qualified Johnny Herbert, the future Williams driver, let's not forget. But both Arrows out-qualified us. Both Jordans. Okay, Jordan have at least actually found some pace again. Well, Damon Hill certainly has recovered some pace to be in 9th place, which is pretty much where you would expect him to be, behind the Mercedes, Ferrari and Mechachrome runners. And speaking of which, it is a Mercedes engine 1-2, and once again, a Bridgestone 1-2-3. Eddie Irvine is not only the quickest Ferrari driver, but also the quickest Goodyear runner. And Eddie Irvine is having a fantastic season. Well, either he's having a fantastic season or Michael Schumacher's having a dreadful season, because once again, Irvine qualified in 4th and Schumacher in 7th. Schumacher was 2/10 off of his teammate. So that's very unusual. Alexander Wurz once again qualified in 3rd, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 5th, Jacques Villeneuve in 8th. It's more or less a fairly standard top 8. In fact, it's a fairly standard qualifying session in general, because you've got the Minardis, Tyrrells and Prost at the back. So then, another dry Grand Prix. That's good news for us as a Bridgestone runner, and actually bad for Ferrari. Ferrari would actually want wet races because they're a Goodyear team. This is why I quite like the idea of a tyre war in Formula 1. I do think well, I'm not saying there should be a tyre war in modern day Formula 1, but I do think it would add an extra element to Formula 1. Having a tyre war with different tyre manufacturers being good in different conditions or at different tracks or different track surfaces, it would add an extra element of unpredictability and variability to a Grand Prix. But anyway, while we don't have that in 2018, we do have that in 1998 and in this series. So then, a dry San Marino Grand Prix, no changes to be made. So then, we qualified in 13th and 15th. Last Grand Prix, Magnussen finished in 7th. Barrichello wasn't so lucky, didn't actually finish at all. But how well will we do in San Marino? Okay, I mean, that's fair enough. There were less retirements overall, so it's understandable that we would finish lower down, although a very similar sort of race. Mika Hakkinen retired with a gearbox issue. And finally, Benetton have had some bad luck because both Benetton drivers retired. Wurz was out also with a gearbox issue, and Fisichella out with an engine issue. So only 4 retirements means that our drivers finish lower down, although still, once again, as I said, for commercial negotiations, if nothing else, I'm glad that both of our drivers have finished 10th and 11th, because that's fairly decent. Although it is bad for wear and for spare parts, although if our guys finish, it means they don't get damage, which kind of helps with spare parts. It's all very complicated. But anyway, so with Mika Hakkinen out, that means his teammate, David Coulthard, won the 1998 San Marino Grand Prix. It was both Ferrari drivers in 2nd and 3rd, but Eddie Irvine once again beat his teammate. And in fact, he beat him by over 4 seconds come the end. You got Jacques Villeneuve in 4th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 5th, so Williams 4-5, and Damon Hill finished in 6th, largely due to the fact that both Benettons retired from the Grand Prix, as well as, of course, Mika Hakkinen, who also retired from the Grand Prix, and had he not retired, he almost certainly would have won the Grand Prix. Despite Mika Hakkinen retiring from the Grand Prix, he is still leading the Drivers' Championship, but his lead has been cut. He is now only 2 points ahead of Eddie Irvine. David Coulthard now in 3rd place and ahead of Giancarlo Fisichella. But as it stands, and we've only done 4 races in the season, so only a quarter of the season to date, but as it stands, the Drivers' Championship is a battle between Mika Hakkinen and Eddie Irvine. And I should point out this is based off of the 1998 season, not 99, because if it was 99 it would be somewhat appropriate, although the fact that Schumacher is still racing doesn't really make it work because, of course, I mean, Schumacher was only out of the 99 Championship due to, of course, what happened at the British Grand Prix, not due to reliability issues, which is what has happened this season. I mean, Michael Schumacher is still behind Jacques Villeneuve and Alexander Wurz, who are joint 6th. And you finally got a Jordan driver in the Drivers' Championship, which also means you will finally see Jordan in the Constructors' Championship, but still with a third of the points that Arrows have. Although, as I said, it is still fairly early days in this season. McLaren, though, are leading the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari in 2nd, having overtaken Benetton. Then you got Williams in 4th and a good way ahead of Arrows and Jordan. But yes, the bottom line is that McLaren are leading the Constructors' Championship, and McLaren do really have a lot to thank Mika Hakkinen for, although Coulthard won this Grand Prix, so Coulthard is finally getting some decent points to his name, and Ferrari do really have to thank Eddie Irvine, because Schumacher's scored a few points, but the majority of the points have come from Eddie Irvine. Who would have foreseen that? Just before I end off this episode, let's have a look at the post-San Marino Grand Prix news. So the first page is just reaction and results from the race, so we already know about that. Williams will be using Mechachrome engines on a customer deal next season. Now that might seem slightly odd. I should point out, for those who don't know, Mechachrome only give customer deals. Damon Hill has signed a deal with McLaren. So that means that McLaren are going to have an all-British driver lineup, because they've already signed a deal with David Coulthard, and now they've signed Damon Hill, and that's not a half-bad driver lineup. I would personally rather have Hakkinen as opposed to Damon Hill, but Damon Hill is still a fairly decent driver in his own right. Well, there you go. Michael Schumacher sticking with Ferrari. Hang on, how's that happened? Olivier Panis has signed a deal with Williams. Now let me just think about this, because Williams have already signed Jacques Villeneuve, and they signed Johnny Herbert. So that means that there's no way Jacques Villeneuve's a test driver. That can't be the case. He's a world champion, so I don't think he would accept a test driver role. So that means, although I'm surprised that either Herbert or Panis would accept a test driver role, but one of them must be Williams' test driver for next year, and I would assume that it is going to be Panis who is Williams' test driver next season. So then guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it more than our technical director and chief mechanic, because both of them have got a big red X next to their names, which basically means they've got complaints about how I'm running the team. It's kind of inevitable. This was going to happen, and Barrichello and Magnussen, yeah, they've not liked the way we've run the team for a while. I think they get annoyed because we tell them to do engine testing, and they're not the test driver, so they shouldn't. Honestly, they can go do one as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, now also our technical director and chief mechanic don't like us, and it probably won't be too long before our chief designer and commercial manager don't like us as well. They will have emailed us about why. I don't check the emails in this game, partly because at the start you honestly just get emails of people moaning at you. Honestly, that is what the emails are filled with. Do you know what? I will show you that in the next episode. I will show you the emails and why I don't check them, because it's just full of people like Alan Jenkins and Dave Redding telling me that I'm doing this wrong, or not spending enough money in this aspect, or not doing enough testing, or doing the wrong testing. They just tell you you're doing stuff wrong. Anyway, yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode more than those guys did. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time for the Spanish Grand Prix. Amongst others, we will be doing, hopefully, 3 Grand Prix in the next episode. That's my plan anyway, although, well, we'll see what happens in the next episode. But until then, I'll see you guys then.